So,
hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in again for this advanced persistent threat presentation, where we're going to be talking about Veeam remediation. I've been joined by Gordon Henwood, who is also a fellow SC with me. My name is Omar Rao. I'm the Senior Systems Engineer here at Veeam. Gordon, do you mind introducing yourself as well, too?
sure. Thank you, Omar. My name is Gordon Henwood. I'm also a system engineer with Veeam, covering the New York metro area and the state of New Jersey.
Thank you, Gordon. We have a packed agenda for today. So obviously, go on the next slide, Gordon. Obviously, we have put together a few cool things for you in this particular presentation. Be ready for looking at the actual ransomware attack we're going to be doing in this particular session. But obviously, the idea around today's agenda is that get to know what exactly the advanced persistent threats are. How do they actually work? What are the common attacks there are? And Gordon, on the other hand, is going to talk about the Veeam remediation, why we stress on 3-2-1 rule all the time. And lastly but not least is we're going to have some cool information to share with you so you can be ahead of the game and then watch the demo at the end of the session. So stick around and get to know this. So let's start off with what exactly is advanced persistent threats. Now, you probably know about ransomware. You probably know about WannaCry or Locky or different kind of threats out there. But in actual reality, advanced persistent threats are mostly a state-sponsored and sometimes non-state-sponsored attacks. Nowadays, obviously, you understand that these things are happening all around us. So when you look at the entire model, that why these are happening, nobody has the answer for it. Sometimes they have a personal vendetta against one country or one organization. Nobody's safe around it. So obviously, these APT attacks, when they happen, they're harvesting your data to make sure they can exploit that against you when the time is right. But also establish hook in your environment so they can go and communicate anytime, and any day. They try to remain undetected across the board. These advanced persistent threats are happening every single time where these hackers or these state-sponsored or non-state-sponsored organizations or individuals are looking into greater access to initiate the attack and put your environment in jeopardy. So at the end of the day, advanced persistent threats are there. They're known as APT attacks. There are many different kinds of it, and I'm going to show you some of them which are there. But before we go in there, I just wanted to let you know that how do they actually work? It doesn't happen overnight. Like these targeted state-sponsored, non-state-sponsored attacks are happening with a defined target in their mind. So when these guys are looking into getting into your environment, there are 12 different steps they're using to get into the door. So the first thing is what they're doing is they're going in and defining the target and they're saying, okay, you know what, these are the organizations we need to attack. But also they build their environment and acquire the environment accordingly. So think about that some organization does not have the skill set. What do? Do you outsource that to another company or another company organization? Same way, these hackers have different environments already. So if they don't have the tools or rootkits and stuff like that, what they do is they acquire other companies or other individuals' infrastructure to build a plan against you. And then they do research, detailed research in your environment specifically. And once the research is done, believe it or not, they do small testing. They want to see that what exactly is happening in your environment. Like, how would you react to that exactly? They deploy the entire infrastructure. They initiate the intrusion attacks on a larger scale. They know the contacts who are there in your organization, and also they're expanding that to other organizations as well, where there are always reinforcement. There is always information going back to them, and they try to stay hidden for a long time. There are so many examples out there, but the average dwell time in US specifically is around 71 days. But when you look at other regions like EMEA or APAC, it usually takes about 177 days or 204 days just to get into the door. But in actuality, it takes about 5 to 10 years to get into the door. Now, you have a newspaper company as an example. I'm not have to say that. It remained undetected for a very, very long time. And all of a sudden, it was communicating backwards. And then the attack happened, right? The initial a true intrusion attack happened. Until that time, they were all undetected, and until that vulnerability was found. So think about the nobody's safe across, but obviously we have to protect ourselves against these APTs. And there are many famous APTs. Obviously, the first one, which I always mention, is the fancy bear. And usually, what these APTs and the naming convention with different animals goes as follows. So bear attack, when you hear that, these are happening, unfortunately, from Russia. There are attacks like kitty attacks, which are happening from Iran. Like, there are different naming conventions, which everybody knows. It's hard to remember APT 28 attack or APT 35 attacks, right? So with fancy bear specifically, there are notable attacks happen in the past. You have DNC email leak happened in 2016. Their main focus is around financial institution, government agency, military, security organization across, and obviously the target is US and some other NATO alliance companies. There's another group called Lazarus Group. That's APT 38. Imagine a non-state sponsor or anybody who is all the above, right? Who went rogue across the board. That is where Lazarus Group comes in. Obviously, there are known aliases. They go by Guardian of Peace, sometimes Who is Team, sometimes they go by Hidden Cobra, Zinc Team. And you probably heard of some of their notable attack, if you don't mind expanding that, Gordon. One of them was Sony breach, happened in 2014 when there was a movie came out. I don't want to say that movie's name. And then the famous WannaCry 2017 attacks, including all the highest and everything which happened across. How they're doing this is you have to think about it as a hacker. I am a certified ethical hacker. Ethical is the point you have to remember. There are many different ways, right? And there are 5 different ways we are going to describe here. The first one is living off the land. Now, living off the land attacks usually happen when there is an access through PowerShell or through APIs where they can run specific processes to encrypt your data set. Now, this is a common way of getting in. Most of the time, this happens when there are insider attacks, right? There are inside people who are running certain amount of PowerShell. So you have to be very cautious about what they're using. Sometimes they use low billing or low BAS as a platform to get in the door. And those scripts are pretty hidden most of the time, and they're sitting there for a long time. So detection and prevention requires you to run certain processes, execute the log files, system resource using check all the time, and always remember this timeline analysis can also be done. Password spraying, on the other hand, is pretty common. So if you want to try to access something like an Active Directory or OVA or OWA or RDP session, there's a million ways you can actually send thousands, not just thousands, millions tries on try to access that data set. Now, when the spray happened, there are a very high number of attempts to get in. Sometimes the system identifies that, okay, this is something as a threat, or some actual organization is trying to accessing, or certain individuals trying to accessing that data set. There will be a large number of bad usernames. You're going to see account getting locked all the time, and the ratio of login success per IP addresses can be going high. The other ones are pretty common. That is social engineering attacks. Those are known as veiling attacks or scanware or baiting attacks. Now, I'm going to give you a small example. So if Gordon has to send an email to me, obviously he knows my email address. He's going to send it out to me, right? And I'm going to open it up. I'm going to read through it. But there are certain ways what these guys use is they think outside the box, and what they try to do is they pretend to be Gordon, and they ask me a question without Gordon knowing. So in that way, I will respond back to him, or I will check his attachment, I will check his link, I will provide him my direct deposit information or my social security number. So think about it, that this is the way what they're doing is they're bringing their rootkits to be hidden in the background, but also letting people open up or send that response, right? So monitoring the user behavior in this case is pretty known and pretty important. And obviously, Veeam is providing you, and Gordon is going to explain that with how we're able to help that. As far as security flaws are concerned, this is the most common you see, especially around ransomware. This window, the red screen, which is there, it's a very painful screen sometimes because you have to pay the bitcoins, you have to pay the ransom. And rest assured, you do not need to pay any ransom. If that happens, you have Veeam on your side. So zero-day attacks or vulnerability manipulation always happen, and these things are coming in the form of some kind of variant was clicked by a user in your organization, or there's insider attacks, or there's towards our targeted attack specifically. It can be prevented pretty easily if you patch manage everything and make sure everything is done across on the system level, like OS updates and stuff like that as well. Lastly but not least here is the phishing attacks. So please remember, phishing attacks are happening all the time with the attachments and with certain kind of URLs which are going to be given to you or your team members. The best way to fix that is educate your users. The only way that can be done. The other ways you can always use around common attacks like this is using email filtering mechanisms, right? Make sure that you are blocking all the malicious attacks and you're scanning anything in the background. But these guys actually are getting smarter every day, and these phishing attacks can be happening on your own website, which has an alternative duplicate of it, and somebody is going in and checking it out or clicking on the link. So just remember, there's many ways of looking at it. So these are some of the common attacks which are out there today, and obviously we can go for hours and hours and hours and talks about it. But I'm going to talk about it from Veeam side of the house, and that is why we have Gordon, who is going to explain how Veeam is helping to remediate against any of those attacks which are there, from living off the land to phishing attacks. So Gordon, go ahead, take it away, buddy. And if you don't mind showing that out, that would be nice.
Sure, great. Hey, great. Thank you for all that great information you gave us prior to this, Omar. But the great thing about having Veeam, and as you see, phishing attacks, the living in the land, password spray, how do we enable you to capture or detect some of these things? So living off the land, as Omar was said, things will lay dormant in your infrastructure, and you don't know when it may truly spike up within your environment. Well, with Veeam Availability Suite, we have a tool called Veeam One that provides real-time monitoring and reporting of your infrastructure. We do have an alarm here that is set to look for unusual writes, high CPU utilization, and that is called possible ransomware. With this alarm, it will trigger any unusual behavior that VM will have, especially during a spike up of some malicious software that is trying to lock some of your file systems. The password spraying, we can use different alarm sets to take a look at what is trying to access your host or even your vCenter. We have an alarm that will detect any bad attempts to try to log on to a piece of your infrastructure. For example, they've gotten hold of your administrator account and they are able to gain access to one small environment. They will try different components with that same environment. With this alarm, we will capture how many times that same ID has tried and was failed and was unsuccessful to try gain access to a piece of your component within your infrastructure. So this alarm will trigger. You will set this alarm, and it will give you a notification so you can start the process of remediating any malicious behavior that you find in your infrastructure. With the social engineering, we can use a powerful querying tool to search for that particular email. So as in Omar's example, he said that an email came from Gordon. I asked him for some information. He sent it back, but it really wasn't me. But now we know that this particular email address and maybe even a topic, such in this example, bank, we can query our backups for that email address, that particular message, a topic, an attachment, and we're able to then identify emails and then get rid of them if we needed to get it out your infrastructure or analyze it further. Zero-day attacks. This is one of the most comprehensive way malware gets into your infrastructure. It lays dormant. You don't know anything is happening until it's too late. Well, with Veeam, we have the ability to test out what we have on the backup to make sure that there's anything malicious laying inside. And the way we do this is with the use of our short backup process. Our short backup process gives us the ability to start up your VMs within a sandbox environment and conduct an antivirus scan of that VM or set of VMs within. So to make sure that when you retrieve any data from within it, you don't retrieve any malicious attacks. Now the phishing, education is important. So you want to be able to report on attempts for phishing. And once this is discovered and captured, with the education of your end users reporting it to you, we can then search through our email system again for the particular names, attachments, like I was saying, through our powerful query. Our queries can be done through the GUI or through PowerShell, and we're able to then search for items that we need to take a better look at. So with our capabilities, we use that as a framework to protect your data, make sure your data is always available for you and available in a clean way. So the first thing that we do is we identify the workloads. So we use tagging to group the resources together. We use data locality so we know where in your infrastructure a particular application should live and give you a holistic view of that particular business application at one pane of glass. Once we identify the workloads, we're then able to protect those workloads using Veeam backup and replication. Following the 3-2-1 rule, we will give you enhancements to protect this data, such as writing to immutable storage, encrypting your backups on a storage device as well. And then again, use of an on-demand sandbox, verification of our backups to make sure there isn't any malicious attack laying within. Once we have protected your environment, your workloads, we're moving on to the next phase, which is actually detecting, monitoring, and reporting of your infrastructure. Now, we're not just speaking of your backup infrastructure, we're talking about your VMware infrastructure as well. So we're able to live monitor, real-time monitor your host, data stores, as well as your VM for behavior. And like I had mentioned before, we can use things as alarms that we have pre-built to monitor suspicious behavior, to monitor bad login attempts, unusual writes within your infrastructure. Once we're able to detect an anomaly within your infrastructure, then we decide how to respond. With Veeam, we are able to move an application triggered off of an event to can orchestrate movement from one infrastructure, from one host to one data center to another based off your plans. And this orchestration can be done through a replication job or through a backup point in time um, response. But prior to us restoring data back into your environment, we're able to give you a secure restore. Now, the secure restore, as I mentioned before, in the way we test our environment within the on-demand sandbox, we're able to call for an antivirus scan of that backup file to make sure that there isn't any malware or any intrusion, any anomalies, any bad signatures sitting within your VM. And then that provides you the ability to then recover a clean VM or items cleanly from within. So we give you protection. We follow standards for the industry, following the 3-2-1 rule. But with Veeam, we enhance this industry standard by providing you with the 1 and the 0, which is at the end. But going back to the left, 3 stands for 3 different copies of your data, 2 on 2 different medium, 1 being tape, different set of disks, cloud object storage, 1 being off-site, again, being tape, disk, or alternate site somewhere else. But with Veeam, we give it the ability to have an air gap solution as well. We introduce the ability to have immutable storage for you to write to. So it means you write your backup file, your data, into this repository, and we're able to give you an additional lock on this data set. This prevents any intrusions getting to this data and able to manipulate this data, delete this data for you, or lock the data. We can do this on-prem as well as in object storage. And then that 0, which is the most important of them all, is the verification. So verifying your data within a true sandbox environment, making sure that there isn't any negative patches within that environment that's within your VM, or you can use this environment to test for any upcoming changes that you need to do in your environment as well. So it's very powerful to verify, able to reuse your data and know that you can prove that you have clean data that you get to for many, many purposes. So following the 3-2-1 rule, what is great with Veeam, we have a storage API that allows us to offset the workloads that you will use from your primary storage, taking its storage snapshots as you normally would to protect that infrastructure. But with Veeam and this API, we're able to process VM data from these snapshots. That allows you to have 1 copy that is essentially outside your infrastructure that is protected following the 3-2-1. So that's one of the 3 copies that you can have. The other, making 3 copies, could be a tape device, where you write to a tape device that is then written to tape, shipped out to an off-site storage location, and then that's completely off-site for you and is air-gapped. But the third choice that you can do is also use a cloud repository. This object storage is a great target. We can use it in the public cloud, such as AWS or Azure, or one of our cloud partners as a target to have air gap your solution. As I mentioned before, with Veeam, we give you the ability to add immutability. We can add this in public storage, such as AWS S3, or within your own infrastructure on-prem within a Linux OS itself. Going back to using the storage snapshot, a little more detail into that, we all take the industry standards of at least your nightly backup, which would start 8 p.m. here in this example, and then there's hours in between before the next backup was to start that is unprotected. Well, with Veeam API integration, we can now orchestrate that storage array snapshot and use that data that we're capturing in between as a source for us to do a recovery. This takes the workload off of your VMware infrastructure, and we totally process this using the array snapshots. This gives you another place to place your copy of your VM data that will fit the 3-2-1 rule as mentioned before. Now we get this dreaded ransomware attack. We have found some anomalies in your environment that triggered off an alarm. You have your first line of defense going through to figure out what exactly happened. You cut off the network connections to that one piece of hardware if it's infecting a whole server. But now we have to find where we can get a good copy of your data. So first place we'll do is we'll spin up an on-demand sandbox using the snapshots from our storage snapshots capability. This will create that sandbox environment for us to test backups prior to going back into production. Once we're able to identify that we need to restore and we have a clean copy of the data and it's time to restore, you have options now. We can use a storage snapshot, as I said before, to do a full VM recovery for the in-between times that we're not taking a true traditional backup of your environment. We can use the snapshots to open them up and then retrieve data cleanly. We can, again, use a secure target if we do find a clean copy, use our demand sandbox environment, take that data, and then we can restore it back into your environment cleanly. But prior to doing the restore, we can invoke antivirus scan to make sure that the backup file and the VMs within that backup file doesn't have anything laying in there. And then, of course, since you did write to a tape device and that tape device off-site, that is a nice clean copy to you also recall back off from off-site, bring it back on-site, and then we're able to retrieve your clean VM data back into your environment from tape. And with the use of Veeam, we're also going to write into object storage. We mentioned before, we can make that copy immutable as well. But that's another off-site location that we can use as a source to restore your data back cleanly. So now we protected your environment. We're able to restore. We know where we got to restore it from. We have to monitor, as I mentioned before. And with the use of our Veeam One tool, we can report real time on your VMware infrastructure, as well as the behavior of your backup infrastructure. You do want to know what your daily or nightly or weekly protection status is of the environment to make sure you have good, clean backups. But you also want to make sure you're in compliance with these backups. But one of the things that you can use in prevention or detection of ransomware is your Veeam backup file growth. So this report in particular will look at all our backup files that we've written to storage. Let's say we have one particular VM that we know that it's usually 500 gigs in the backup size nightly, not much change on this VM. And then all of a sudden, this report is generated. And you notice that all of a sudden now your backup file is doubled in size. This is unusual. There hasn't been any additional changes to that environment. So what you'll do then, you will compare that to the last runs using this report to see the size that you were getting. Once it's doubled, that can be a great early detection that there's something writing, unusual behavior in that environment that was captured within our backup file. Something that's, executing a lot on a file system and such. And this will give you another line to detect unusual behavior of your production environment using your backup data itself. Being ahead of the game is really important. So we talked about follow the 3-2-1 rules, which provide us to have multiple copies of your data on 2 different medium, one being offsite, and you have verification with that 0 by using the on-demand sandbox capability with Veeam. But in addition to all of that, you should have at least a quarterly pen testing for vulnerabilities. This will vet out any other anomalies such as password spraying or failure to cut off an environment that's supposed to be air gapped. So you want to test that environment at least once a quarter, if not more, to make sure that nothing has intruded or infected your infrastructure. And then having knowledge, being more knowledgeable what's out there, such as dark reading and reading the hacker news and being up on the security intelligence, will give you the information you'll need of what's out there, what is being tried, what's the changes in some of these attacks. So it will give you better awareness of what to expect. So it's knowing what the data protection laws are. So you know that they're trying to attack a particular hardware vendor, a particular protocol. You'll do things preventively to help that intrusion not get very far or not affect you at all in your infrastructure.
That's awesome, Gordon. I think we learned a lot in this entire demo. Before we go into a demo, I wanted to point this out that always stay ahead of the game by knowing what's happening around you. So back in 2019, city of New Orleans got hit by ransomware, and Veeam was there to help them recover back their entire infrastructure within the RTO and RPO they have set for the entire city. So we have a lot of use cases so you can go and study. But this time around, what we're going to do is we're going to show you a live environment, which we have recorded intentionally to make sure we're not spending extra time here. Just want to make sure you understand that how everything is working. So do you mind expanding that out, Gordon? Perfect. So in this case, what you're looking at is 2 birds on a machine, which we have provisioned all together. This is going to be a target machine. I have a ESXi host created for it, which is running locally on my external hard drive. And obviously, I have a backup server where I'm using the backup server and backing up the file, where I have the virtual machine created on that ESXi host, which you're looking at, the 2 birds. So in this case, in this particular thing, the first thing I'm doing is I'm disconnecting from the network because I'm going to be testing WannaCry. So obviously, WannaCry goes through the network all the time. So don't be that guy like me who encrypted all of his NAS and everything along the way. So in this one, I have a few document files. I have some pictures, some PDF files. In the pictures, I have some turtle pictures and stuff like that for animals. And also I have some PDF files, which are important files, which is in any case you have. So also from a task manager side of the house, obviously I'm showing you the CPU usage on this particular machine right now. And that is a key point of it, that you need to keep an eye on the high usage once we initiate the attack. Now, I did my due diligence to bring in a live ransomware encryption, and I'm going to basically encrypt this using WannaCry. We can try Locky, which locks everything up, but in this case, we're going to be doing the WannaCry testing. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm basically extracting the file with the password which we have set. I will not be able to share that password with you. To use it on your own risk, but this is just for show and tell purposes. I just want to show you how quickly you're going to be able to come and restore. So now we have executed the file. I can rename the file if I want to, or I can put this on a desktop and rename it as a JPEG file or PDF file or whatever file name you want to give that. And then sometimes the defender on the computer does recognize. So most of the time when people are using this, be careful. Antivirus, it will not be detecting it. So I'm initiating the attack. Keep an eye on the processes on the top right-hand side of this task manager. As you can see, the encryption is happening. My files are getting encrypted. First thing you're going to be doing in this case is, if you know there's a machine which is getting encrypted, if you have seen that picture where you have a glass door in front of the server and just say pull the plug, right? So that is what you should be doing in this case, is eliminating or terminating that particular virtual machine power. So obviously in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the virtual machine, and then I'm going to rely on the backup copy, which is a clean copy, to go and restore from. So everything is now encrypted. I can see all the files are getting encrypted, and then the next thing I'm going to see obviously is the Bitcoin information, which I don't want to share here intentionally. So I am going on the left-hand side, and I am going to right-click and power off the machine, because that's what I should be doing. So give a second here. The machine has been powered off. Now I can go into my Veeam backup replication console. Never pay for the ransom. That is the key behind it. So my my webinar VMs have that particular backup in there for the machine. I have a disk and I have 14 restore points. So I have multiple restore options, but this time I'm going to choose an instant VM recovery. I'm going to be picking up the restore point, which I'm choosing the latest one. I have more options though. I can restore to the original location or to a new ESXi host specifically. In this case, I don't have a new one, so I'm just going to restore to the original location. But this is important too. This is scanning. This is what Gordon was talking about, that you can use your own AV to scan anything for malware before you restore. And then you have the option to go power on the machine on the target, or you can turn off. It doesn't matter. In this case, I'm going to turn it on intentionally, and I'm going to hit finish. So next thing which is happening in the background is once I finish, is we're going to do an NFS mount from the target and bring back the file as a spare tire approach using the backup server as a mount server. So it is going to follow the process. Now you can see on the top left-hand side in the background is the instant VM recovery already there, and then all the processes already happened. Just to double check everything, I want to show you the ESXi host, what processes has taken there. So I'm logging into the ESXi host just to show you what processes have been taken on the virtual machine and on the storage. So you can see this machine has been now powered on temporarily from the backup target specifically. And now next thing is obviously console into the machine, where I can go in and I can console in from here. Or I can, once I fix the issue, I can move it to production or stop publishing depending on the situation. Because I don't have the VMware console installed on this machine, it was in rush. So I'm going to go back to my ESXi host, and I'm going to find that machine which is now being powered on, and I'm going to console into that machine. And this is the machine which I was referring to. So because the machine is already powered on, all the next thing left is simply clicking on it and logging into it to making sure that we get the clean copy before the attack. So that's why it's important that when you do get encrypted on a small scale or a larger scale, it doesn't matter, never, ever, ever, ever pay for ransom. You need to make sure that your copies are protected and you have multiple copies and multiple mediums, so you can go and get the clean copy and restore the environment back to original state. And you can see those two loving birds with all the original files before the encryption happens. So this is how easy that is with Veeam, that Veeam is providing you that option to go and restore anytime, anywhere you want. So I hope this was very helpful for all of you. Obviously, these kind of sessions, we're going to keep doing it. I just want to make sure that everybody understand that Veeam is not a security company, not on the front end, but we are providing you security in the form of immutability, just like Gordon mentioned. And also, we are providing multiple ways for you to have multiple type of copies or multiple mediums as well, and providing you the fastest and 91 different ways to restore your own backup. That's why Gartner has rated us on the top right-hand side for the last 5 years in a row, because our technology is evolving every single day. So we thank you, all of you, for joining today's session. And if you guys have any question, reach out to us or visit veeam.com for more information. Thank you very much for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon.